In the vast expanse of the galactic community, where 1,000 species trade, negotiate, and coexist under the careful watch of the Intergalactic Council, there exists an unspoken rule that has governed civilization for millennia. Some things are simply the cost of doing business. Children go missing. The weak suffer. The powerful take what they want. Every species has learned to accept these harsh realities. Every species has found ways to look the other way, to rationalize, to move on. After all, the greater good of galactic peace demands compromise, and sometimes that compromise comes at a terrible price. Every species, that is, except one. When humanity joined the galactic community just 50 years ago, the other races thought they understood these newcomers. Humans seemed reasonable enough, a bit emotional perhaps, prone to strange attachments and irrational loyalties, but ultimately pragmatic when it mattered. They would learn the rules. They would adapt. They would accept the way things were, just like everyone else. The other species were wrong. Dead wrong. And when a human child named Sarah Martinez went missing on the trade station Nexus Prime, the galaxy was about to learn just how catastrophically they had misjudged humanity's true nature. What followed would shake the very foundations of galactic civilization and force every species to confront a terrifying question. What happens when a species that values every single life meets a universe that treats some lives as expendable? The answer would change everything. The morning shift on Nexus Prime began like any other, with a gentle hum of atmosphere processors and the soft chatter of a dozen different alien languages echoing through the massive trade station's corridors. Commander Elena Rodriguez walked her usual patrol route, her human eyes scanning the bustling marketplace where beings from across the galaxy conducted their daily business. Nexus Prime was considered one of the safest stations in the sector, a neutral ground where even the most hostile species could meet under the protection of Intergalactic Council law. The station housed over 2 million inhabitants from 47 different worlds, all living in carefully maintained harmony. As the human security liaison, Elena had spent 3 years ensuring that the few thousand humans living on the station integrated smoothly with the existing community. She paused at the viewing port overlooking the central plaza, watching as Vorthak merchants haggled with Xylerian traders, while Ketheri children played in the specially designed gravity wells. The sight always reminded her why she loved this assignment despite being so far from Earth. Here, differences were celebrated and cooperation flourished. Commander Rodriguez to the residential sector 7 immediately crackled her communicator, interrupting her thoughts. The voice belonged to Sergeant Mike Chun, and the tension in his tone made Elena's stomach clench. "On my way," she replied, breaking into a run. Sector 7 was the human residential area, home to families who had chosen to make Nexus Prime their permanent residence. She found Chun standing outside apartment 7-4B, his face pale and drawn. Through the open doorway, Elena could see Maria Martinez sitting on her couch, tears streaming down her face while her husband Carlos paced frantically behind her. "What's the situation?" Elena asked quietly. Sarah Martinez, age 8, didn't return home from the education center yesterday evening, Chen reported. Parents waited until this morning, thinking she might have stayed late for activities, but when they checked with the center, they found out she never arrived for her afternoon classes. Elena felt ice form in her stomach. An 8-year-old girl, missing for over 12 hours on a space station. The possibilities were all terrifying. She entered the apartment and knelt beside Maria. "Mrs. Martinez, I'm Commander Rodriguez. We're going to find Sarah. I promise you that." Maria looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "She always comes straight home from school. Always. Sarah is a good girl. She follows the rules. Something terrible has happened to her." Carlos stopped pacing and faced Elena. "We've already contacted the station authorities. They said they'd file a report and investigate when they have available personnel." "Available personnel? My daughter is missing, and they're talking about schedules." Elena's jaw tightened. She knew the station's bureaucracy well, and, unfortunately, Carlos was right. The Nexus Prime Security Council operated on a priority system that often left individual cases waiting for days or weeks. "I understand your frustration," she said, "but I want you to know that every human security officer on this station is now dedicated to finding Sarah. We don't wait for bureaucracy when our children are in danger." She stood and activated her communicator. "All human security personnel, this is Rodriguez. Code 1, repeat code 1. 8-year-old Sarah Martinez is missing. Drop everything and report for emergency briefing in 15 minutes. Chun raised an eyebrow. "Commander, Code 1 is supposed to be reserved for station-wide emergencies that threaten multiple populations." "This is a station-wide emergency," Elena replied firmly. "Any place where a child can disappear without immediate action is a place where no one is safe." Within minutes, all 12 human security officers on Nexus Prime had assembled in their small briefing room. Elena looked at each face, seeing her own determination reflected back. Sarah Martinez vanished sometime between leaving the Human Education Center at 1,400 hours yesterday, and now she began. "I don't care what the station protocols say about waiting periods or jurisdiction disputes. A human child is missing, and we're going to tear this station apart until we find her." Officer Janet Kim raised her hand. "Commander, the station's main security force has jurisdiction over missing persons cases. They've already told the Zinthari Council that interfering with their investigation could result in diplomatic incidents." "Let me be very clear about something," Elena said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "I don't care if finding this child starts the next galactic war. We're going to find her. The only question is whether the station authorities want to help us or get out of our way." The other officers exchanged glances. This was not standard procedure by any measure, but every one of them had been chosen for this assignment because they understood what it meant to be human in a galaxy that often didn't value human life. "Chun, I want you to review every security feed from the past 24 hours. Start with the Education Center and work outward. Kim, get me a complete list of every non-human who has had any interaction with the Martinez family in the past month. Torres, coordinate with the station's computer systems and track every movement in and out of the human residential sectors." Elena continued assigning tasks with military precision. "Williams and Jackson, interview every human family with children. Find out if anyone has noticed unusual behavior, strange questions, or suspicious individuals. Henderson and Park, start canvassing the merchant sectors. Someone has to have seen something." "What about me, Commander?" asked Officer David Thompson, the youngest member of their team. "You're coming with me to have a conversation with Security Chief Rathos about exactly how seriously this station takes child safety." As the officers dispersed to their assignments, Elena felt the familiar surge of protective fury that had driven her throughout her military career. She had served in 3 different conflicts before accepting this posting, and she had learned one fundamental truth. Humans might be newcomers to the galactic community, but they brought something with them that many older species have forgotten. They brought the absolute refusal to abandon their own. Security Chief Rathos was a Keltani, a species known for their logical approach to problem-solving and their respect for established procedures. His office reflected this mindset, with everything arranged in perfect geometric patterns and every surface gleaming with efficiency. "Commander Rodriguez," he said without looking up from his data screens, "I understand you have concerns about the missing human child case." "I have concerns about the complete lack of action on a missing child case," Elena corrected. "Chief Vrathos, with respect, an 8-year-old girl has been missing for over 12 hours. In human law enforcement, the first 24 hours are critical." "In galactic law enforcement," Vrathos replied, his insectoid features showing no emotion, "we follow established protocols designed to prevent panic and false alarms. Most missing persons cases resolve themselves within 72 hours. Most missing persons cases don't involve children. The statistical difference is negligible. Children often become confused about directions or distracted by unfamiliar sights. This is a large station with many entertainment areas that might appeal to a young human. Elena leaned forward. Chief, have you ever had children? The Keltani reproduce through collective spawning pools. Individual attachment to offspring is not part of our biological structure. Then, let me explain something about human biology and human culture, Elena said, her voice deadly calm. When a human child goes missing, every adult of our species considers themselves personally responsible for that child's safety. We don't wait for statistics or protocols. We act. Commander, I appreciate your species' emotional responses, but this station operates under Intergalactic Council regulations. We cannot disrupt normal operations for every individual case that creates anxiety among residents. Elena stood. Then, we have a fundamental disagreement about the value of a child's life. We have a fundamental disagreement about proper resource allocation and risk assessment, Vrathos corrected. I have assigned 2 officers to investigate when their schedules permit. This is standard protocol. Standard protocol is about to meet human protocol, Elena said. Chief Vrathos, I'm formally notifying you that human security forces on this station are conducting our own investigation. We will share any information we discover, but we will not wait for your convenience. Commander, such actions could be considered interference with official investigations. The consequences could include revocation of your security privileges and formal complaints to your Earth government. Elena smiled, and there was nothing pleasant in the expression. Chief, feel free to file any complaints you want. But understand this. While you're filling out paperwork, we're going to be finding that little girl. And if we discover that administrative delays cost us valuable time in saving her life, the consequences will be far more serious than diplomatic protests. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Chief, you might want to prepare your staff for some very determined humans asking very direct questions. We tend to be persistent when children are involved. As Elena left Vrathos's office, her communicator buzzed. Commander, this is Chun. You need to see what I found in the security feeds. On my way. Elena hurried to the security center where Chun had set up a temporary command post. The room was already filled with human officers, all studying data screens and comparing notes. What do you have? She asked. Chun pointed to a security monitor showing footage from the education center. This is yesterday at 1,347 hours, just before Sarah's afternoon classes were supposed to begin. Elena watched as a small girl with dark hair and a bright yellow backpack approached the education center's entrance. The girl looked around as if confused, then walked past the entrance and continued down the corridor. That's definitely Sarah, Elena confirmed, recognizing the child from family photos. But why didn't she go to class? Watch this, Chin said, advancing the footage. At 1,349 hours, we have this. The screen showed a tall, humanoid figure approaching Sarah from behind. The being wore the flowing robes typical of the ethereal caste, one of the oldest and most respected species in the galaxy. Elena watched as the figure bent down and appeared to speak to Sarah, who nodded and followed willingly. Do we have a clear view of the ethereal's face? Elena asked. Negative. The robes include a hood that blocks facial recognition, but I tracked their movement through 17 different camera angles. Chun switched to a different feed, showing the ethereal leading Sarah through increasingly remote sections of the station. The footage showed them entering a cargo lift that provided access to the station's lower levels. That lift goes to the maintenance sectors and the old mining tunnels, Elena said, her blood running cold. Those areas aren't monitored by regular security. It gets worse, Chin said grimly. I checked the passenger manifests for all ships that have departed since Sarah went missing. 3 vessels left the station during the night cycle, and 2 of them had private cargo holds that weren't inspected. Elena felt the protective rage building inside her chest. Someone had taken a human child, and they had used the station's own blind spots to do it. Give me everything we have on recent ethereal arrivals, she ordered. Cross-reference with any ships that departed in the past 12 hours. and I want to know why cargo holds left this station without inspection. Officer Kim looked up from her workstation. Commander, I got something else. I interviewed the Martinez family's neighbors, and Mrs. Chun mentioned that her son David has been having nightmares for the past week. Nightmares about the tall shadow people who take children away. Bring David here, Elena said immediately. Sometimes children notice things adults miss. While they waited, Elena studied the security footage again, memorizing every detail of the ethereal's appearance and movement patterns. Something about the being's body language bothered her, but she couldn't identify what. David Chin arrived with his mother a few minutes later. The 7-year-old boy looked nervous, but determined to help find his friend Sarah. Elena knelt down to his eye level. David, your mom said you've been having bad dreams. Can you tell me about them? David glanced at his mother, then back at Elena. The tall people in the flowing clothes. They walk around the station at night, looking at all the children. But they don't look like they're supposed to look. What do you mean? When they think nobody's watching, they don't move right. Like they're pretending to be something they're not. Elena felt every instinct screaming at her. David, have you ever seen one of these tall people talking to children? Yes, the boy whispered. Yesterday, I saw one talking to Sarah by the education center. But Sarah looked scared, and the tall person kept looking around like they were worried about getting caught. Elena stood, her mind racing. An ethereal who moved wrong, who looked around nervously, who specifically targeted a human child in an area with limited security coverage. This wasn't a random crime of opportunity. Chen, pull up everything we have on ethereal biology and behavior patterns, she ordered. I want to know if it's possible for another species to disguise themselves as ethereals. Already on it, Chen replied, his fingers flying over the data screens. According to the Galactic Species Database, 3 different species can alter their physical appearance enough to pass as ethereals from a distance. But here's what's interesting. All 3 of those species are currently banned from entering council stations due to ongoing legal disputes. Someone is using ethereal disguises to move freely around the station, Elena realized. And they're specifically targeting human children. Her communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Officer Williams. Commander, we've got a situation in the merchant sector. I need you down here immediately. Elena and her team rushed to the merchant sector, where they found Williams standing outside a small shop that sold exotic foods and cultural artifacts. The shop's owner, a diminutive villain named Grix, was cowering behind his counter while Williams questioned him. What's the situation? Elena asked. Grix here just admitted that he's been approached by someone wanting to purchase human curiosities for off-world collectors, Williams reported. When I pressed him for details about what kind of curiosities, he got very nervous. Elena approached the counter, her voice gentle but firm. Grix, I need you to tell me exactly what this person asked you about. The small alien's whiskers twitched with fear. Commander Rodriguez, I swear I would never participate in anything illegal. But this being, they offered tremendous payment for information about human children's routines and preferences. What kind of information? School schedules, favorite foods, typical clothing styles. They said they were researching human culture for an academic study. Elena felt her hands clench into fists. Described this being. Tall, wearing traditional ethereal robes. But their voice was wrong, and they smelled like the chemical preservatives used in biological specimen storage. When was this? 5 days ago. I told them I couldn't help with such research, but they left payment anyway and said they would return. Elena looked at Williams. We need to coordinate with station security now. This isn't just a missing child case anymore. Someone is actively hunting human children. But when they tried to contact Chief Rathos, they discovered he was in an emergency council session that couldn't be interrupted. Elena's frustration boiled over. That's it, she declared. We're not waiting for bureaucracy while a predator stalks our children. Torres, I want every off-duty human on this station mobilized. Security personnel, maintenance workers, civilian volunteers, everyone. We're going to search every inch of this station until we find Sarah. Commander, Kim said hesitantly. Organizing civilian search parties without official authorization could result in serious consequences from the Council. Elena turned to face her team, and they saw in her eyes the same fierce determination that had carried humanity from a single world to the stars. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "In 5,000 years of galactic civilization, how many species do you think have faced extinction? How many cultures have disappeared because they followed proper procedures instead of protecting what mattered most?" The officers remained silent, understanding the weight of her words. Right now, somewhere on the station, an 8-year-old human girl is probably terrified and alone. Every minute we waste on protocols and procedures is a minute we're failing her. So I'm going to ask each of you a simple question. Are you human security officers, or are you galactic bureaucrats? Officer Thompson stepped forward first. "I'm with you, Commander." Sarah comes first. One by one, every officer in the room declared their commitment. Elena felt a surge of pride in her species and her team. "Then, let's go find our little girl," she said. "And let's show this galaxy what happens when someone threatens a human child." As the human security force mobilized for an unauthorized station-wide search, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were fighting against more than just one criminal. The reluctance of station authorities to take immediate action, the ease with which someone had moved through security systems, the targeting of human children, specifically all of it suggested something larger and more sinister than a simple kidnapping. But whatever they were facing, Elena was certain of one thing. They would find Sarah Martinez, and they would make sure that whoever took her understood the terrible mistake they had made in threatening humanity's children. The hunt was about to begin. Within 2 hours of Elena's decision to mobilize civilian volunteers, the human sections of Nexus Prime had transformed into something resembling a military operation. Word spread through the community with remarkable speed, and soon every human on the station knew that Sarah Martinez was missing and that their people were searching for her. Dr. Amanda Foster, the station's chief human medical officer, abandoned her scheduled surgeries and converted the medical bay's conference room into a communication center. Engineer Marcus Webb shut down non-critical systems throughout the station's human sectors, redirecting power to enhance sensor arrays and communication networks. Even the children contributed, with teenagers using their knowledge of the station's recreational areas to guide search teams to places adults might overlook. Elena stood in the improvised command center, watching displays that showed the positions of over 300 human volunteers spread throughout Nexus Prime. The sight filled her with both pride and determination. Their people had responded with the kind of unity that had made humanity's expansion into space possible. "Commander," called Dr. Foster from her communications console, "I'm getting reports from search teams in sectors 12 through 18. They're encountering resistance from station security." "What kind of resistance?" "Security officers are ordering our people to disperse, claiming they're interfering with official operations." Team leader Rodriguez from Sector 15 says they're being threatened with detention if they don't return to their quarters immediately. Elena's jaw tightened. "Patch me through to all team leaders." Dr. Foster nodded and activated the station-wide comm system. Elena's voice echoed through the corridors of Nexus Prime, reaching every human ear on the station. "This is Commander Rodriguez speaking to all search teams. I want to make something absolutely clear. We are not stopping this search. If station security has a problem with human beings looking for a missing human child, they can take it up with me personally. Continue your assignments. If anyone tries to stop you, remind them that we are exercising our rights under Intergalactic Council law to protect our community." She paused, then added with steel in her voice, "And if anyone actually tries to detain you, resist. A child's life is more important than diplomatic protocols." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the station, search teams reported renewed determination and increased cooperation from civilian volunteers. Elena realized that her people weren't just searching for Sarah anymore. They were making a statement about who they were as a species. Officer Chun approached with a data pad full of new information. Commander, I've been analyzing the pattern of ethereal sightings over the past month. There have been 17 reported encounters with beings matching our suspect's description, and they all occurred in areas with high concentrations of children from various species. Elena studied the data, noting the locations and times. This isn't random. Someone has been studying this station's child populations systematically. It gets worse, Chen continued. I cross-referenced these sightings with missing persons reports filed over the past 6 months. There have been 14 missing children from various species, but the cases were classified as resolved when the families stopped pursuing them. Stopped pursuing them? What do you mean? According to the files, the families all eventually withdrew their missing persons reports, claiming their children had returned home safely. But I contacted 3 of these families directly, and none of them would discuss the cases. They seemed terrified. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Someone is taking children and then somehow forcing the families to cover it up. That's my assessment, Chun agreed. But here's what's different about Sarah's case. Her parents haven't stopped fighting. They haven't been intimidated or bought off or whatever happened to the other families. Because they're human, Elena said quietly. Whoever is behind this has dealt with other species before, but they don't understand us. Her communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Search Team 7, operating in the station's abandoned mining sections. Commander Rodriguez, this is Taylor. We found something you need to see immediately. Elena, Chun, and Thompson rushed to the mining levels, areas that had been sealed off for decades after Nexus Prime transitioned from a mining operation to a trade hub. The corridors here were dark and poorly maintained, with atmospheric systems that barely functioned. They found Search Team 7 standing outside a heavily reinforced door marked with warning symbols in multiple galactic languages. Team leader Sarah Taylor, a former Marine who now worked as a civilian contractor, pointed to fresh scratches around the door's locking mechanism. Someone has been using this area recently, Taylor reported. The door was supposed to be permanently sealed, but the locks have been replaced with newer models. And there are power cables running into this section that aren't on any official station schematic. Elena examined the door's security system. It was definitely newer than the surrounding infrastructure, and the technology was more sophisticated than anything normally found in abandoned areas. Can we get through it? She asked. I can override the locks, Thompson offered. But if there's anyone inside, they'll know we're coming. Do it, Elena ordered. If Sarah is in there, we're not leaving without her. Thompson connected his security override device to the door's control panel. After several tense minutes, the locks disengaged with a soft click. Elena drew her sidearm and motioned for the others to stay behind her as she pushed the door open. The corridor beyond was well lit and climate-controlled, a stark contrast to the abandoned area surrounding it. The walls were lined with sophisticated computer equipment and monitoring systems. Elena could hear the hum of advanced life support systems operating somewhere deeper in the complex. This is no abandoned mining tunnel, Chen whispered. Someone has built a full operational facility down here. They moved carefully through the corridor, following signs of recent activity. Elena noted that the equipment was all high-end technology, far more expensive than anything a simple criminal could afford. Whoever was behind this had significant resources. The corridor opened into a large chamber filled with monitoring equipment and data screens. Elena's blood turned to ice when she saw what was being displayed. Detailed profiles of children from dozens of different species, including behavioral analyses, family structures, and personal schedules. Commander, Taylor called from across the room. You need to see this. Elena hurried to where Taylor was examining a series of containment cells built into the chamber's far wall. The cells were equipped with life support systems designed for different atmospheric requirements, suggesting they were intended to hold beings from various species. Most of the cells were empty, but one contained a small figure curled in the corner. Sarah, Elena called out, rushing to the cell's viewing window. The little girl looked up, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. She was alive, but Elena could see that she had been crying and was obviously terrified. "Stay back from the door, sweetheart," Elena said gently. "We're here to take you home." Thompson immediately began working on the cell's locking mechanism, while Elena tried to comfort Sarah through the reinforced glass. "Are you hurt?" Elena asked. Sarah shook her head. "They said they were going to take me to see my parents, but then they brought me here. I want to go home." "We're going to get you out right now," Elena promised. "Your mom and dad are waiting for you." As Thompson worked on the locks, Chun discovered a computer terminal that was still active. The screen showed a shipping manifest for a vessel called the Nebula Harvest, scheduled to depart Nexus Prime in 6 hours. "Commander," Chun called urgently. "Look at this cargo list." Elena read over his shoulder, and what she saw made her stomach turn. The manifest listed biological specimens for research purposes, along with delivery coordinates for a facility in the Kathrani system, a region known for its lack of legal oversight. They're not just taking children, Elena realized. They're shipping them off station as cargo. The cell's locks finally disengaged, and Elena rushed inside to gather Sarah in her arms. The little girl clung to her, sobbing with relief. "It's okay, baby," Elena whispered. "You're safe now. We're going to take you back to your parents." But as they prepared to leave the facility, Elena's tactical training kicked in. This was too easy. They had found Sarah quickly, the facility had been lightly secured, and no one had tried to stop them. It felt like a trap. "Taylor, take half the team and escort Sarah back to the residential sectors immediately," Elena ordered. "Chun, Thompson, and the rest of you are staying with me. We're not done here." "Commander," Taylor protested, "we have the child. Our mission is complete." "Our mission is to protect all human children," Elena corrected. "And that computer system contains evidence of a trafficking operation that's been taking kids from multiple species. We're shutting this down permanently." As Taylor's team escorted Sarah back to safety, Elena began downloading every file from the facility's computer systems. What she discovered made her realize they were dealing with something far larger than a single kidnapping. The operation was called Project Acquisition, and it had been running for over 2 years. The files contained detailed information about child trafficking routes that stretched across multiple sectors, involving dozens of different criminal organizations and corrupt officials. Most shocking of all, the operation had been specifically targeting children from species that were new to the galactic community, believing that these species would be less likely to pursue investigations aggressively. "My God," Chen whispered as he read the files. "They've taken over 300 children in the past 2 years." Elena continued reading, her anger growing with each page. The operation was headquartered on a station in neutral space, beyond the jurisdiction of any single government. The children were sold to various buyers, some for forced labor, others for biological experimentation, and some to wealthy collectors who treated them as exotic pets. "Commander," Thompson said from across the room, "I've found something else. There's a communication log showing messages between this facility and someone on the Nexus Prime Security Council." Elena hurried to read the communications, and what she found confirmed her worst fears. Chief Wraithos himself had been providing information about station security procedures and helping to delay investigations into missing children cases. "He's been helping them," Elena said, her voice filled with cold fury. "The chief of security for this station has been actively participating in child trafficking." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red warning lights flashed, and automated systems announced. Facility lockdown initiated. Security protocols activated. Elena realized they had triggered some kind of failsafe system. Emergency barriers began descending from the ceiling, threatening to trap them in the facility. "Move!" Elena shouted. "Everyone out now!" They ran through the facility as it shut down around them, emergency systems sealing off sections and cutting power to various areas. Elena could hear the sound of approaching footsteps echoing through the corridors behind them, suggesting that their presence had alerted someone. They reached the main entrance just as the final barrier began to descend. Thompson dove through first, followed by Chun and the rest of the team. Elena was last, sliding under the barrier with inches to spare. Safe in the abandoned mining tunnels, Elena activated her communicator to contact the Search Command Center. "This is Rodriguez. We've recovered Sarah Martinez, and she's being escorted back to her family now. But we've uncovered evidence of a major trafficking operation that involves station security officials. I need every human security officer to report for emergency briefing in 1 hour." "Commander," Dr. Foster's voice crackled back. "Thank God Sarah is safe. But we've got another problem. Chief Rathos has issued a station-wide alert declaring all human security operations illegal. He's ordering the arrest of all human security personnel for interference with official investigations." Elena looked at her team, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. They had saved one child, but hundreds of others were still in danger. And now they knew that the very officials responsible for protecting the station's residents were actively working against them. "Dr. Foster, relay this message to every human on the station. We are not stopping. We have evidence of massive corruption in station security, and we're going to expose it. Tell our people to document everything, record all interactions with station officials, and prepare for the possibility that we might need to defend ourselves." "Commander," Chun said quietly, "if we move against station security officials, we'll be crossing a line we can't uncross. Earth Command might disavow our actions." Elena thought about Sarah's terrified face in that cell, about the hundreds of other children who had disappeared, about the families who had been intimidated into silence. "Earth Command sent us here to protect human interests and ensure our people's safety," she said. "If that means crossing lines that corrupt officials want to draw, then that's what we'll do." She activated her communicator again, this time broadcasting on an open frequency that every being on the station could receive. "This is Commander Elena Rodriguez of Nexus Prime Human Security. 2 hours ago, we rescued 8-year-old Sarah Martinez from a child trafficking operation being conducted in the abandoned sections of this station. We have recovered evidence showing that members of the Station Security Council have been actively participating in this operation." Elena paused, knowing that her next words would change everything. "I'm formally requesting that the Intergalactic Council dispatch an immediate investigation team to Nexus Prime. Until such an investigation can be conducted, human security forces will maintain independent protection of all residents of this station, regardless of species. We will not allow corrupt officials to endanger any child, human or otherwise." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Elena's communicator exploded with incoming messages from across the station. Some were supportive, praising the humans for their decisive action. Others were outraged, accusing them of vigilante justice and illegal interference. But the message that concerned Elena most came from an encrypted source. "Commander Rodriguez, you have made a serious mistake. Return to your quarters immediately and cease all unauthorized activities, or face consequences that will extend far beyond this station." Elena smiled grimly as she deleted the message. Whoever had sent it clearly didn't understand what they were dealing with. "Thompson," she said, "I want you to take half our people and establish a security perimeter around the human residential areas. No one gets in or out without our permission." "Yes, ma'am. What about the other half?" "We're going to pay Chief Vrathos a visit. It's time for the galaxy to learn what happens when someone threatens human children." As Elena and her team prepared for what would likely be the most important confrontation of their careers, she reflected on how quickly everything had changed. 12 hours ago, she had been a security liaison focused on maintaining peaceful relations with alien governments. Now she was leading what amounted to an armed uprising against corrupt officials. But as she thought about Sarah's face and the evidence of hundreds of other missing children, Elena knew they were doing the right thing. Sometimes protecting what mattered most required abandoning the safety of established procedures. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't just follow rules, they enforced justice. And When it came to protecting children, they would stop at nothing to see that justice done. The confrontation Elena had anticipated came sooner than expected. As she and her team made their way towards station administration, they found their path blocked by 12 Nexus Prime security officers in full combat gear. At their head stood Chief Vrathos, his insectoid features rigid with what Elena recognized as barely controlled rage. "Commander Rodriguez," Vrathos announced in his mechanical voice, "you are under arrest for unlawful interference with official station operations, violation of Intergalactic Council protocols, and incitement of civil unrest. Surrender your weapons and communication devices immediately." Elena stopped 10 feet away from the security force, her own team forming a protective formation behind her. She noticed that while the station security officers had weapons drawn, they looked nervous. Several were glancing between her and Vrathos as if uncertain about their orders. "Chief Vrathos," Elena replied calmly, "I assume you're aware that we just rescued a kidnapped child from a trafficking operation hidden in your station's supposedly abandoned areas. I am aware that you conducted an unauthorized search that contaminated an active crime scene." Vrathos shot back. "Your interference has compromised weeks of careful investigation." Elena felt her temper flare, but kept her voice level. "Chief, are you claiming that station security was aware of the trafficking facility and chose to leave a kidnapped child there as part of an ongoing investigation? I'm claiming that your species' emotional responses have led to actions that may have allowed the real criminals to escape justice." "The real criminals?" Elena stepped forward, her eyes locked on Vrathos. "You mean the ones who have been communicating with someone using your personal access codes? The ones who received detailed information about station security protocols that could only have come from the security chief's office?" Elena saw several of the station security officers shift uncomfortably. She realized that Vrathos's own people were beginning to doubt their chief's explanations. "I don't know what fabricated evidence you think you've discovered," Vrathos said, but Elena detected a note of uncertainty in his voice. "But making false accusations against station officials is a serious crime." "False accusations?" Elena pulled out her data pad and activated its holographic display. "Would you like to explain these communication logs showing coordination between the trafficking operation and your personal communication codes?" The holographic display showed message after message detailing security patrol schedules, investigation protocols, and specific information about families with children. Every message was tagged with Vrathos's personal encryption signature. The effect on the station security officers was immediate and dramatic. Several lowered their weapons entirely, while others began backing away from Vrathos. Elena realized that many of them were probably decent beings who had joined station security to protect people, not to enable child trafficking. "Those files are obviously fabricated," Vrathos insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. "Human technology is notorious for producing false data." Officer Kalani, a Draxi female who served as Vrathos's second-in-command, stepped forward. "Chief Vrathos, these access codes are your personal encryption keys. The only way someone could fabricate messages using them would be if they had a direct cooperation or if you were the actual sender." Elena watched as the station security force began to fracture. Some officers remained loyal to their chief, but others were clearly troubled by the evidence. She realized this was her opportunity to prevent a violent confrontation. "Officer Kalani," Elena said, addressing the Draxi directly, "I have additional evidence that I believe you and your officers should see before you make any decisions about following further orders from Chief Vrathos." Elena activated another file on her datapad, this one showing the detailed profiles of missing children from multiple species. She made sure the holographic display was large enough for all the security officers to see clearly. "This trafficking operation has been taking children from across the galactic community for over 2 years," she explained. "According to these files, they've successfully kidnapped and sold over 300 young beings. The operation specifically targets species that are new to galactic society, believing that these families will be less likely to pursue aggressive investigations. She switched to another file. This document details how the operation has been protected through corruption of local security officials on multiple stations. Officials who receive payment for providing inside information and for ensuring that investigations into missing children are delayed or abandoned entirely. Several of the station security officers were now openly staring at Chief Rathos with expressions of disgust and betrayal. Elena could see that many of them had probably joined law enforcement specifically to protect innocent beings, and the revelation that their own chief had been enabling child trafficking was devastating. Chief Rathos, Officer Kalani said, her voice filled with cold anger, "I have served under your command for 7 years. In that time, I have filed reports about 17 missing children cases where I recommended immediate action, and you ordered delays or classified the cases as low priority. Were you deliberately sabotaging those investigations?" Officer Kalani, you are allowing emotional manipulation by humans to cloud your judgment, Vrathos replied, but Elena could see panic beginning to show in his movements. These fabricated files are designed to create exactly this kind of mistrust and disruption. Then, you'll have no problem submitting to a data verification scan that will prove the files are false, Elena suggested. Unless, of course, you're concerned about what such a scan might reveal. Elena saw several of the station security officers exchange meaningful glances. In galactic law enforcement, refusing a verification scan when accused of corruption was generally considered an admission of guilt. "I do not submit to demands made by rogue security forces," Vrathos declared, "and I will not allow human emotions and human disregard for proper procedures to destabilize this station." That was when Officer Kalani made the decision that would change everything. She drew her weapon, but instead of pointing it at Elena, she aimed it directly at Chief Vrathos. "Chief, you are relieved of command pending a full investigation into these charges," she announced. "Under galactic security protocols, I am assuming temporary command of station security operations." The tension in the corridor exploded into chaos. About half of the security officers immediately supported Kalani's decision, drawing their weapons and aiming them at Vrathos and his remaining loyal officers. The other half remained loyal to their chief, creating a three-way standoff that could turn violent at any moment. Elena realized that this was exactly the kind of situation that could escalate into a station-wide conflict involving thousands of innocent beings. She needed to de-escalate quickly. "Officer Kalani," she said, "I propose a temporary cooperation agreement. Human security forces will share all evidence we've gathered with you, and we'll work together to ensure that no more children disappear while proper investigations are conducted." "Commander Rodriguez," Kalani replied, "I appreciate your species' dedication to protecting children, but I cannot formally recognize unauthorized security operations." "Then, don't recognize us formally," Elena suggested. "Recognize us as concerned citizens exercising our rights to protect our community. We're not asking for authority over other species. We're asking for the right to protect our own people and to share information that will help protect everyone's children." Elena could see Kalani considering the proposal. The Draxi female was clearly intelligent and dedicated to actual law enforcement rather than political maneuvering. But before Kalani could respond, Chief Vrathos made a desperate decision. Elena saw him reach for what appeared to be an emergency communicator, probably intending to call for backup from off-station sources. Elena moved without thinking, her military training taking over. She lunged forward and tackled Vrathos, sending them both crashing to the deck. The emergency communicator skittered across the floor, just out of Vrathos's reach. That communicator connects to off-station criminal contacts. Elena gasped as she struggled to pin the larger alien. "Don't let him activate it." Officer Kalani moved quickly, securing the device while Elena restrained Vrathos. The remaining security officers loyal to the chief found themselves outnumbered and facing weapons from both their own colleagues and Elena's team. "This is mutiny," Vrathos hissed, his insectoid limbs clicking angrily. "The Galactic Council will not tolerate this kind of uprising against established authority." "The Galactic Council will not tolerate child trafficking," Kalani replied firmly, "especially when it's being protected by corrupt security officials." Elena released her hold on Vrathos and stood, allowing Kalani's officers to take him into custody. She was breathing heavily from the brief struggle, but she felt a sense of relief that the immediate crisis had been resolved without bloodshed. "Officer Kalani," she said, "I formally request that you examine all evidence related to the trafficking operation and that you allow human security forces to continue protecting our residential areas while proper investigations are conducted." Kalani nodded. "Commander Rodriguez, while I cannot formally authorize your operations, I will not interfere with your efforts to protect human civilians, and I will personally review all evidence you've gathered." Elena felt a surge of hope. For the first time since this crisis began, she was working with station officials rather than against them. But their moment of cooperation was interrupted by Elena's communicator buzzing with an emergency message from the command center. "Commander, this is Dr. Foster. We've got a major problem. 3 ships have just entered the system, and they're heading directly for Nexus Prime. The lead vessel is identifying itself as a Kathrani enforcement fleet, claiming authority to resolve the human uprising on the station." Elena felt her blood turn to ice. The Kathrani were known throughout the galaxy as brutal enforcers who cared nothing for civilian casualties. If they were claiming authority over the situation, it meant that someone with significant power was trying to cover up the trafficking operation by eliminating everyone who had discovered it. "How long until they arrive?" Elena asked. 18 hours, maybe less if they push their engines." Elena looked at Officer Kalani, seeing her own concern reflected in the Draxi's features. They both understood what this meant. Whatever investigation they hoped to conduct would have to happen quickly, before forces arrived who would likely terminate everyone involved rather than risk exposure. "Officer Kalani," Elena said, "I think we need to accelerate our cooperation. If the Kathrani are coming here to clean up this situation, we need to get evidence to the Galactic Council before they arrive." "Agreed," Kalani replied. "What do you propose?" Elena thought quickly, her mind racing through tactical possibilities. They had evidence of corruption and child trafficking, but they needed to get that evidence to authorities who couldn't be compromised or intimidated. "We need to contact the council directly, bypassing all normal communication channels that might be monitored," she said. "And we need to ensure that copies of all evidence are distributed widely enough that they can't be suppressed." "Commander," Officer Thompson interrupted, "I've been monitoring communication traffic, and there's something else you should know. The trafficking operation apparently extends beyond just this station. I'm seeing references to similar facilities on at least 12 other stations across 4 different sectors." Elena realized that they had stumbled onto something much larger than a simple kidnapping ring. This was an organized criminal enterprise that spanned multiple governments and involved corruption at the highest levels. "Officer Kalani, we're not just dealing with a local problem," Elena said. "This is a multi-sector criminal organization, and they're trying to eliminate us before we can expose the full scope of their operation." Kalani's expression hardened with determination. "Then, we need to make sure that exposure happens before the Kathrani arrive." Elena activated her communicator and broadcast on a frequency that would reach every being on the station. "This is Commander Rodriguez. All residents of Nexus Prime should be aware that a Kathrani enforcement fleet is approaching the station. While we work to resolve the current security situation, all families with children should take appropriate precautions and remain in secure areas." The response was immediate panic from many of the station's civilian population. The Kathrani had a reputation for violence that transcended species boundaries, and everyone understood that their arrival could mean indiscriminate action against anyone connected to the current crisis. But Elena also noticed something else. Her broadcast had prompted dozens of messages from civilian sources across the station. Beings from multiple species were coming forward with information about suspicious activities, missing family members, and strange incidents that they had previously been afraid to report. Officer Kalani, Elena said, I think we're about to discover that this trafficking operation has affected far more families than we realized. People have been too scared to speak up before, but now they're seeing that someone is actually taking action. Elena's prediction proved correct. Within hours, they were overwhelmed with reports from families across the station. Rillan merchants reported approaches from mysterious buyers asking about their children's habits. Vorthan families described receiving threatening visits after their teenage daughter had gone missing months earlier. Even Xylerian elders shared concerns about young adults who had disappeared during off-station trading expeditions. Elena and Kalani worked together, coordinating teams to interview witnesses and collect evidence. What emerged was a picture of systematic predation that had been hidden behind a facade of normal station operations for years. But as they worked, Elena couldn't shake the knowledge that they were racing against time. The Kathrani fleet was approaching, and once they arrived, the opportunity to expose the full truth might disappear forever. Kalani, she said during a brief break in their investigation, there's something I need to ask you. Are you prepared for the possibility that we might need to resist the Kathrani when they arrive? The Draxi officer looked at Elena for a long moment before responding. Commander, 3 days ago, if someone had told me I would be considering armed resistance against the Council enforcement fleet, I would have said they were insane. And now I've seen evidence of systematic child trafficking that has been protected by corruption at multiple levels of government. Now I understand that sometimes doing the right thing means standing against forces that claim authority but have abandoned justice. Elena nodded, feeling a deep respect for the alien officer who was willing to risk everything to protect innocent beings. Then, we need to prepare for the possibility that the next 18 hours will determine not just our own fates, but the safety of children throughout this sector of space. As Elena and Kalani began coordinating defensive preparations, Elena realized that the situation had evolved far beyond a simple missing child case. They were now standing at the center of a conflict that would test the fundamental principles of galactic civilization. The question was whether courage and determination would be enough to prevail against forces that had operated in the shadows for years, protected by corruption and enforced by violence. The Kathrani enforcement fleet arrived ahead of schedule, dropping out of hyperspace with the kind of dramatic flourish that was designed to intimidate anyone watching. Elena stood in Nexus Prime's command center alongside Officer Kalani, watching as 3 massive warships took position around the station. The lead vessel, a kilometer-long dreadnought called Final Judgment, immediately began broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was delivered in the cold, mechanical tone typical of Kathrani communications. Nexus Prime Station is now under emergency enforcement protocols. All unauthorized security operations will cease immediately. Any resistance to Kathrani authority will be met with appropriate force. Elena felt a chill run down her spine, but she also felt something else, determination. In the 16 hours since they had begun working together, she and Kalani had accomplished something remarkable. They had not only gathered comprehensive evidence of the trafficking operation, but they had also managed to get that evidence distributed to over 40 different news organizations and government agencies throughout the galaxy. Commander, Dr. Foster called from her communication station. I'm receiving urgent messages from Earth Command. They're ordering all human personnel to cooperate fully with the Kathrani investigation and to avoid any actions that might escalate the situation. Elena read the message on her personal communicator and felt her jaw tighten. Earth Command was clearly more concerned about diplomatic relationships than about the safety of children. The message explicitly ordered her to turn over all evidence to Kathrani authorities and to submit to their jurisdiction without resistance. What are your orders, Commander? Officer Thompson asked quietly. Elena looked around the command center, seeing the faces of humans and aliens who had worked tirelessly to expose the truth. In the past day, she had watched Kalani risk her career and possibly her life to stand up against corruption. She had seen civilian volunteers from dozens of different species come together to protect children. She had witnessed what the galaxy could be like when beings chose justice over convenience. "My orders are to protect innocent lives," Elena said firmly. "And that's exactly what we're going to do." She activated the station-wide communication system. "This is Commander Rodriguez, speaking to all residents of Nexus Prime. In the past 24 hours, we have uncovered evidence of a child trafficking operation that has affected families from every species on this station. We have also discovered that this operation has been protected by corruption within station security and possibly within higher levels of galactic government." Elena paused, knowing that her next words would determine everything that followed. "The Kathrani fleet, now surrounding our station, claims authority to resolve this situation. But I want every parent, every family, every being who cares about children to understand something. The Kathrani approach to problem-solving typically involves eliminating everyone connected to a situation rather than conducting careful investigations." She could see Kalani nodding in agreement, along with several other station officials who had joined their investigation. "Therefore," Elena continued, "all evidence we have gathered has been transmitted to independent news organizations and government agencies throughout the galaxy. Whatever happens to us in the next few hours, the truth about child trafficking in our sector will be exposed. No one will be able to cover this up." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Elena's communicator exploded with incoming messages from across the station and beyond. News organizations were demanding interviews. Government officials were requesting copies of evidence. Most importantly, families from dozens of different worlds were coming forward with their own stories of missing children and intimidation by authorities. Elena realized that their investigation had accomplished something unprecedented. It had broken the silence that had protected child traffickers for years. But their moment of triumph was interrupted by a new broadcast from the Kathrani flagship. "Station residents, you have been misinformed by rogue elements who are attempting to destabilize galactic peace through false allegations against legitimate authorities. All personnel involved in unauthorized security operations have 30 minutes to report to Docking Bay 7 for processing. Any failure to comply will result in direct intervention." Elena looked at Kalani. "Are you still with us?" "Commander," Kalani replied, "I have reviewed all evidence, interviewed dozens of witnesses, and confirmed the authenticity of the documentation you provided. This trafficking operation is real, the corruption is real, and the threat to children throughout our sector is real. I will not allow it to continue." Elena felt a surge of admiration for the Draxi officer. Kalani was risking everything for principles that transcended species loyalty. "Then, we need to make our stand," Elena said. "Not just for our own people, but for every child in the galaxy who deserves protection." Elena activated her communicator one more time, broadcasting on a frequency that would reach not just Nexus Prime, but surrounding systems as well. "This is Commander Elena Rodriguez of Nexus Prime. To any ship captain, government official, news organization, or private citizen receiving this transmission, we are about to be silenced by forces that profit from child trafficking. But before that happens, we want the galaxy to understand something about humanity." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "When a human child is threatened, every human becomes responsible for that child's safety. When we discovered systematic trafficking of children from multiple species, we chose to protect all of those children, not just our own. We chose justice over diplomacy, action over bureaucracy, and courage over convenience." Elena could see her words having an effect not just on her own people, but on the aliens who had joined their investigation. Beings from a dozen different species were nodding in agreement, their own protective instincts awakened by humanity's example. "We are not asking the galaxy to adopt human values or human methods," Elena continued. "We are asking the galaxy to remember why civilizations exist in the first place. to protect those who cannot protect themselves. When that fundamental purpose is abandoned, civilization becomes nothing more than organized exploitation. As Elena finished her broadcast, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The Kathrani were launching assault shuttles, clearly intending to take control of Nexus Prime by force. All human security personnel report to defensive positions, Elena ordered. All civilian volunteers evacuate to secure areas but maintain communication networks. Officer Kalani, are your people prepared to support us? My people are prepared to defend this station and its residents, Kalani replied firmly. The Kathrani have no legal authority to intervene in local security matters, especially not with military force. Elena felt a moment of fierce pride in the alliance they had built. Humans and aliens working together, united by shared values rather than divided by species differences. But as the first Kathrani assault shuttles approached the docking bays, Elena realized that their greatest challenge was yet to come. They were about to face forces that had grown accustomed to using violence to silence inconvenient truths. The Kathrani assault teams that breached Docking Bay 7 were heavily armed and clearly expecting minimal resistance. What they found instead was a carefully coordinated defensive position manned by humans and aliens working in perfect cooperation. Elena had positioned her forces to take advantage of the station's architecture, using narrow corridors and defensive choke points to neutralize the Kathrani advantage in numbers and firepower. More importantly, she had made sure that every action was being recorded and broadcast to the galaxy in real time. Kathrani Assault Team, this is Commander Rodriguez, Elena announced over the station's communication system. You are conducting an illegal boarding action against a civilian station. We are prepared to defend ourselves, but we are also broadcasting your actions to news organizations throughout the galaxy. The choice is yours. Withdraw and allow proper authorities to investigate the trafficking evidence, or continue your assault and show the galaxy exactly what kind of law enforcement you represent. The Kathrani response was predictably violent. They opened fire immediately, clearly intending to suppress resistance through overwhelming force. But Elena's defensive positions held, and, more importantly, the galaxy was watching. Within minutes of the assault beginning, Elena's communicator was flooded with incoming transmissions. Government officials from multiple systems were demanding explanations from Kathrani Command. News organizations were broadcasting live footage of heavily armed military forces attacking civilians who were trying to protect children. Most significantly, other space stations and planetary governments were beginning to announce their own investigations into child trafficking operations, inspired by the evidence that Elena's team had distributed. The battle for Nexus Prime lasted 3 hours. Elena's forces, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with the desperate courage of beings protecting something precious. But they also fought with tactical intelligence, using every advantage their knowledge of the station could provide. Kalani's security forces proved invaluable, their knowledge of the station's security systems allowing them to isolate Kathrani assault teams and prevent them from reaching critical areas. Human civilians showed remarkable courage, maintaining communication networks and providing intelligence about Kathrani movements even under fire. But it was the response from outside Nexus Prime that ultimately determined the outcome. As news of the assault spread throughout the galaxy, public outrage reached unprecedented levels. Species that had never cooperated before began demanding joint investigations into child trafficking. Governments that had been reluctant to challenge Kathrani authorities suddenly found themselves facing public pressure to take action. The turning point came when the Galactic Council itself intervened, ordering the Kathrani fleet to withdraw and announcing the formation of an independent investigation committee with authority to examine trafficking operations throughout the sector. Elena watched from the command center as the Kathrani ships reluctantly pulled back from Nexus Prime. She felt exhausted, battered, and emotionally drained, but she also felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Commander, Dr. Foster called from her communication station. I'm receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Fleet Admiral Chun wants to speak with you personally. Elena accepted the communication link, expecting to face official censure for her unauthorized actions. Instead, she found herself looking at an older woman whose eyes showed both pride and concern. Commander Rodriguez, Admiral Chun said, I have a message from the President of Earth and the United Nations Security Council. Your actions in exposing the child trafficking operation and organizing resistance to cover up efforts have been officially commended. Earth stands behind every decision you made. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes. Thank you, Admiral. But I need you to know that this wasn't just humans. We had help from beings throughout this station who chose to put children's safety ahead of their own convenience. That's exactly what makes me proud to be human, Admiral Chen replied. We don't just protect our own people. We inspire others to be better than they thought they could be. Over the following weeks, Elena watched as the galaxy transformed around them. The evidence they had gathered led to arrests and investigations on 43 different stations. Over 200 missing children were recovered and returned to their families. Corrupt officials at every level of government were exposed and prosecuted. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy had learned something about the power of refusing to accept injustice as normal. Species that had been rivals for centuries began cooperating on child protection initiatives. Governments that had previously ignored trafficking were forced to take action by their own citizens. Elena stood in the observation deck of Nexus Prime, watching ships from a dozen different worlds arrive to participate in the new interspecies child protection agency. The sight filled her with satisfaction, but also with renewed determination. Commander, Kalani said, joining her at the observation window, I've received confirmation that my appointment as Chief of Interspecies Security Cooperation has been approved by the Council. Congratulations, Elena said sincerely. I can't think of anyone better suited for the position. I owe this opportunity to what I learned from working with humans, Kalani replied. Before this crisis, I thought that following proper procedures was the most important part of law enforcement. Now I understand that protecting innocent lives is the only procedure that really matters. Elena nodded, thinking about how much had changed since Sarah Martinez had gone missing. A single human child's disappearance had sparked a galactic reformation in how civilized species thought about justice and protection. Kalani, Elena said, do you think the galaxy is really going to change? Or will things gradually go back to the way they were before? I think, Kalani said thoughtfully, that the galaxy has learned something it can't unlearn. Humans have shown us that it's possible to choose courage over convenience, action over bureaucracy. Once beings realize they have that choice, it's hard to go back to accepting injustice as normal. Elena smiled, watching as another ship arrived carrying investigators and child protection specialists. The sight reminded her of why she had joined security forces in the first place, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. A year later, Elena stood in the same observation deck, but now she was wearing the uniform of Director of Human Relations for the Interspecies Child Protection Agency. Nexus Prime had been transformed from a simple trade station into the headquarters for the galaxy's most successful child protection organization. On her desk was a letter from Sarah Martinez, now 9 years old and attending school on Earth. The letter was full of drawings and stories about her friends, but it ended with words that Elena would never forget. Thank you for saving me and for making sure no other kids have to be scared like I was. Elena thought about the conversation she'd had with Admiral Chun just that morning. Earth Command was establishing new protocols for human security forces throughout the galaxy, protocols that prioritize protection of innocent life over diplomatic convenience. Other species were requesting human advisors for their own security organizations, wanting to learn how to combine tactical effectiveness with unwavering moral commitment. The galaxy had learned something from humanity's response to child trafficking, that civilization's strength wasn't measured by its ability to maintain order, but by its willingness to fight for justice when that order failed to protect the innocent. Elena activated her communicator to check in with security stations throughout the sector. Each report showed the same pattern: increased cooperation between species, more effective child protection protocols, and a dramatic decrease in trafficking activity. As she reviewed the reports, Elena reflected on how one missing child had changed the course of galactic civilization. Sarah Martinez's disappearance had revealed not just a criminal conspiracy, but a fundamental weakness in how the galaxy approached justice and protection. Humans had responded to that weakness not with resignation or political maneuvering, but with absolute determination to fix what was broken. They had shown the galaxy that some things were worth any cost: the safety of children, the pursuit of justice, and the courage to stand against corruption regardless of the consequences. The galaxy had been shocked to discover that humans wouldn't let child harm go unpunished. But Elena suspected they had learned something even more important: that choosing justice over convenience didn't weaken civilization. It made it stronger than anyone had imagined possible. Standing in her office, looking out at ships from dozens of worlds working together to protect children throughout the galaxy, Elena knew that humanity had found its true purpose among the stars. They weren't just another species seeking profit and territory. They were the species that reminded the galaxy what civilization was supposed to protect. And as long as humans remained true to that purpose, no child in the galaxy would ever again disappear into the darkness without someone fighting to bring them home.